Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Friday morning.
Good
This is
morning.
Friday, June the 12th, 2015, and we have WX Live webinar number 153. This morning, Cowboy Andy Stapleton will be presenting Parallel Task. It's all yours, Andy.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Glad I could make it after a couple of weeks of working hard on different things. But one of the things that I wanted to discuss or been looking at discussing, and we'll do some more of this at the Developers Conference this fall, which Tim will talk to you about later on. But they came out with a whole new set of features in version 20 that on the surface makes you think that, oh man, I can do all kinds of things and speed up stuff and things like this, and you really can. But I also want to talk about, when to use it and when not to use it. But what these new features are is things called parallel task execute, parallel task, task wait all, request update UI, and execute main thread. Each of these new functionality is based upon utilizing the multi-core technology that's been out in Intel CPUs now for a while. And this really kind of takes advantage of them. The overall functionality and views is in this particular link on http doc WinDev, which you can go through each one of the feature sets and things that you do, that you can utilize it for, with some excellent little examples to start with about how possibly you can use them. Again, what it does is it uses the other cores on the computer to execute code in the background. It really allows you to divide or separate tasks and also do updates in background without necessarily affecting the user experience. In other words, if you have someone that says, man, this screen is slow because you're doing a lot of background tasks, or you doing a lot of background fetches and things like this, then that is a candidate for using the parallel task. Do you need to use it for everything? No, I don't think so. I think that, if you're doing straight selects to fill in, some drop lists, some combos and things like this that I don't know necessarily that it gives you any direct advantage. But there are some specific items that I believe that it really does give you some excellent advantages. In keeping up with, say, appointments, keeping up with background tasks where you have, say, a multitude of users updating databases or updating records and things like this, and you want to make sure that each one of the records is synced throughout a team of people on the floor. A dashboard that needs to refresh and reflect charts and things like this. All of these are good candidates for it because you as a user that's watching or looking at these type tables and items to work with, and somebody else changes a record or changes adds a record, deletes a record, things like this, you won't know anything about it unless you refresh the entire screen. And that's the way it's been for quite some time for us, is that we'd always have something in the background, a timer or something like that, basically reloads the screen to show the changes. And that works, but you always get that, I really don't like it, because they can be in the middle of something and all of a sudden the whole screen refreshes. So you're going through a lot of code to try to say, oh, well, he was using it or the focus is on there, suspend that, And you don't have to do that anymore. Some of the key pieces to remember in utilizing this, if you're accessing data in the background, it requires context copying. So you need to use the P2 full copy HFSQL context directive on the end of the statement. That way your you're fine. You cannot display to the user any info messages or error messages. No interaction whatsoever with the screen. Data is there. Even if there's no parameters needed, this is the one difference between some of the, like the execute process and things like this, where you leave off the open close parentheses. There's a second parameter. You must put that in there. So you put the open close parentheses in there, even if you don't have any parameters to pass. If you need an immediate execute to the screen for whatever you're doing in some of these background threads, then you have a function called execute main thread with the procedure name. So if you're going through a process and you need to force something to the screen, then use the execute main thread to do that. That's one way you can display a message to the end user that something has happened, or deals like that is going on, and that allows you to do that, because you can pass a parameter to it and deal with it. Refreshes are all done with a function called request update UI. That is a new feature that they have. Basically, it'll stack up. You can call that 50, 60 times, and it's only going to execute once at the end. So, for any reason, if you're stepping through several and you need to, you don't know where it's going to break out, you can put it in several different places, but it's only going to execute once instead of several times. And that's a new embed area in your window that you can utilize. The cool thing about the request update UI is you can actually have it as a procedure and pass it parameters, so you can tell it to only update a section of the screen instead of the entire screen as an option as well, and we'll take a look at that. Okay, you can use it in a class, but cannot use it to call a class method. So basically, what I've done is taken the CCS management classes, and I've added 2 additional methods in there. One is to execute this as a thread, and the other one is to actually go fetch additional records that was in there. You can run a task in your main thread. So you can do the execute main thread, and you use the P2 main thread to do that, and then request update UI is how you update the main screen. Okay? Some of the items that you need is, if anybody's ever used the scheduler, you're aware of the appointment variable, which is basically a structure that they have. They also have a structure for the parallel tasks. So we create an array of those tasks if you're going to do multiple ones. And so in essence, what we're doing here is, let's take a table of people and number of purchases as an example. You want to keep up with it. Well, I would create an array of tasks. I would create a task, and then for each record that's in my file or something like this, I'm going to do a parallel task execute of the procedure and tell it to full copy SQL context. And then I add all those to the array, and at the end, I'm doing a parallel task wait all. Now, that doesn't mean you're waiting all of the tasks. What it means is that you can run X number of threads at a time. Let's say you got it set to 3. You can run 3 at a time, and the rest of them are going to wait until those 3 are done. And then it's going to execute the next 3, the next 3, and next 3 until it's done. And what that'll do then is it allows you to individually on each record update the current information on that record as it runs through. And this is something that I use. This is something that I have embedded in the classes as a thread execute in order to update the current screen and keep up with each individual's records. Again, like an appointment deal where somebody, you got several people setting appointments. Now all of a sudden this person, instead of them, just not knowing that appointment's set, you see an appointment show up on the screen that somebody else has put in. And this is what's handling it. Now somebody changes an appointment, cancels an appointment, updates the time, moves it, things like this. This is how it goes out there and realizes that those have changed without reloading every appointment in the system. So this is a really good example of how to use it, but you can implement it on tables or anything else that you need in order to keep things moving along. Let's take a look a little bit at the code in that area, and we will then see how that works. Again, I'm going to put out the new classes with this new code information in there, so everybody can see it and get the updated version. If you're already using the classes in your product and want to utilize this, then what you'll have to do is copy the methods over, but it works out nicely. What we have here is a little office schedule. We got an appointment schedule is basically what it is. And one of the things is we have a couple of deals to refresh the schedule and refresh the window. And we have a timer set up for this as well. Okay. Let's see here. So the timer is auto refresh, and what this is doing, I'm just setting this timer to run every 5 minutes or so is what it's running. And then if somebody's looking at a certain different time frame, I've got a little pause in there to say, okay, you don't do anything. Okay. And that's all this does is waits 5 minutes, then runs again to see if anybody's done any changes to the records. In there, we've got two items. You can see we got the request update UI, and all the request update UI does is, again, we look here at the code for this section, is redisplays the screen and sets my hours or whatever I'm viewing on there to do an update to make sure they're in the right place. But the biggest key is that we've got now the class is saying fetch by thread. Okay, the fetch by thread is the key point because, like I said, you can't call a method with this, but you can certainly utilize the method within. So here's what we got. We declared the class for the actual record. What I am doing is making sure that we've got any sorting taken care of, a local field, and then I'm declaring the tasks and the parallel tasks, and I've got a max ID in there so in case we want to add new records. Yes, we have new records in there. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm looping through my currently selected records, and I am then, depending upon the type of action it is, calling the parallel task execute, the refresh for those records, okay, and updating with what the ID of the field is. Once that's done, the last thing I'm doing is a fetch new. And you remember I was telling you, you got to pass the parameters anyway, and that's what I did right there, okay? So what this is doing is looping through every one of them and saying, okay, for every record I currently have in there, I want to refresh what the record looks like. Everybody's cool. Okay? So I've got all that done. And then I'm going to say, well, go see if I've got any new records. Well, if you've done any SQL or look at anything else, you need to know the last record or the max record you have to see if there's any new. Otherwise, you're going to pull in the same exact ones. So the thing that I do here is I check to see whether or not we're in ascending or descending order. I set the primary key filter to say, give me everything less than this or give me everything greater than this. And I execute the same SQL statement I do in my fetch. And based upon that, I set my where clause and execute the statement. And for each one I get, I add it to the current array. When that's all done, the request update UI then happens, and guess what? I now have new appointments to the screen, or new records to be shown. This also works very well if you have a large amount of data. Let's say the individual is showing 20,000, 50,000 records, 60,000 records in whatever table he's showing. Instead of having the client wait for the entire 50,000 records to show up, you can go out there and get 200, and then in the background you utilize this fetch new and just keep loading 200 at a time. So in the background, it's filling in additional 2, an additional 2, an additional 2, an additional 2, all the way through while you are currently allowing them to continue to work or drink their cup of coffee or do whatever they're doing, and they think that everything's fine with the program because, voila, it's actually doing something. Okay? That's it in a nutshell. The thread execute, all it's doing is running an existing procedure to refresh the current record. And you can do that with an H execute H-read seek first is what I'm using. Direct off the deal, I'm using H-read seek first, getting the record and bringing it back. I'm done. You can add whatever code you want, but that's all it's doing is doing a reseek and re-updating that record with whatever's been changed with it. Why do I really like the parallel task execute? When we were at the last developers conference, we sat down and tried to figure out a way to, in the background thread, update the screen. And this was not only to show changes, but again, to add more records if we needed to. And the threading part was always giving us just a little bit of trouble. It was giving us a little bit of trouble. We got it to work, but I didn't like it because of the hard refresh and things that was happening. This cured that entirely. It works very nicely. So again, kind of going back the way to look at it, because this is not a very long session this morning to look at it. How do you use your parallel task execute? Here's my opinion. If you have a lot of items to get for a screen, say over 10 or 15, in order to show the data to the screen for a form, I would use it. Okay. If you have a large amount of data, like in a appointment, a table that needs to be constantly updated and shown on the screen one way or another, a scheduler, an organizer, keeping updated, say, any type of graphing on the window. I would also use it for any type of dashboard type functionality. So if you got dashboards and things like that, it would keep the background information of that dashboard. So when you call the refresh window or something like that, it would automatically update without refreshing, redisplaying the screen. Things like that is what you use it for. And I think it's an excellent, excellent tool that they provided in version 20, and I've been very, very happy to use it. Again, I'm going to package up the new classes, and I'll put them out there for Tim to post for everyone to get that's currently using it, with the new version of the repository as well for those that need the repository. And I'm ready for any questions, Tim. Tim?
Tim said he's just going to be back just now.
Okay.
So I'm fielding the questions.
Have you played with this, Wolfgang?
Yeah, I'm right back.
Fantastic. I started playing with it, but I got sidelined with other issues.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm eager to get into this more because that seems to going to save a lot of my alarm processing windows.
There is one thing that it does do. If you have to say, I'll give you one example, one way that I'll be utilizing it. If you got billing or we're sending a bunch of transactions through, things like this, and 700, 1,000, 2,000, and trying to build something up for, say, a billing report or something like that, it would be an excellent way to do it because you could do 4 or 5 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 4 or 5 records at a time. Their example is a good example too. That if you're utilizing it to display images in a looper or images on a table, mm-hmm. then you display the record and in the background utilize the parallel execute to go get the image because it takes longer to get the image. Okay. And display it to the screen after the fact. I thought that was a pretty good idea.
That's slick. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good
actually.
Idea. Yeah,
that's a good tip because images usually tend to be data-wise
right.
more to fetch as just plain name and address and account number kind of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's a
And
question
yeah,
on
Yeah,
the
there's a
chat
question
here.
out here, Andy.
I'm not looking at them. How do I look at them?
We'll ask it for you.
Okay.
It's from Derek, and it says, have you tried this with Execute Update UI for immediate refresh as opposed to waiting
Yes.
for the task to complete?
Yes. I actually have. I've done that. I've got two places where as I go through, because I have a bunch of different things that I'm picking up, and as I go through there, about the fourth or fifth one down, I do an execute UI to do an immediate update of whatever's on the screen so far. Yeah, it works nicely.
Yeah, thanks for the question and the answer.
Yeah, the question is I mean, listen, realistically, I would not utilize it in this case, where I'm updating existing records. I would do it if I've got, again, we get back to the 10 or 15 lookups and stuff, or a large screen that has to have a lot of drop lists from different tables and things like that, or different files and stuff. I would utilize that on that. I would let it populate or start showing those combo boxes and tables and stuff that need to be on there about every couple for sure, real quick. I'd do those almost immediately. But if I'm doing background processing where I'm refreshing records, or I'm going to go background processing to get new records, I would not. I would use the request update UI to do that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other part about this that that we didn't show. Let me show that real quick. Inside your refresh code here, you can tell it and pass it a parameter. So I can say and make it a procedure, and give it a default so it does everything, and then I can actually do a switch. Now, here's the deal. What this does is that I can actually refresh the current position of the appointment without changing the hours to view. Now, what the hours to view, actually what it does is every so often it'll move the appointment up. So basically you're looking at a 2-hour window of, last hour and current hour constantly. Okay, so you don't have to scroll up and down when you want to relook at something. That's what that does on a timer. But I could be background updating this if they're looking at, say, an earlier position or tomorrow or the next day or something like that. And I can still update the organizer without changing their time frame on the screen by just passing it the type on the fly. Okay, so if I send it org, it'll only do this part. And that again is done with the request. That'll be done this way: request update UI, and the parameter would be org. That's all I'd have to do is send that, and that solves the problem. Okay.
Just a quick question on there.
Yeah.
Can you put any procedure name there?
Yeah, you call it whatever you want.
Okay. And it'll automatically pick it up and know when you do the rest. Okay.
Andy procedure name that wolf.
No, you're getting overboard.
I'll get it right. Needs. So doesn't matter to it.
No, just doing a question there because that's if you don't know it, that request use
True.
update.
You're right. Where you realize that, where it tells you in the documentation that you can do this, and what I realized that is that I kind of learned it directly from this because they're doing the same thing here.
Mm-mm.
Okay, on all the organization stuff. So since they're doing it there, I said, well, I can name it whatever I want, I guess, and so I did. Now I've been calling it our window just for a refresh window or something like that, but I don't,
Yeah.
I kind of give it a little bit different name. But other than that, it's fine. You call it whatever you want, and then in your organization code, you can tell it that, okay, at this point I want it to do the organization, but at this other point I want it to do something else entirely. Refresh chart as an example.
It's quite nice because then you don't always do intensively everything. You just do selectively what you actually have done.
Right. So you can actually do this. Yeah. And it's been in my experimentation with it and my utilization of it has been very, very nice as far as that's concerned. Being able to update a portion of the screen
without
if I need to.
Doing it within
that's correct. Yeah. And I think that where it's going to really come in handy is part of it is parent-child relationships, the appointment scheduler, and charting is where that request update UI is going to really come into.
And also when you want to start doing three-tier programming, the MVP model or whatever the case is, it also comes handy.
Yeah, and I think they utilize it a lot in the MVP. That's kind of my next experimentation is getting more into the MVP stuff because they allow you to do some things in MVP that I think that I can tie my classes into. That I could actually go back in there and tie my classes into the template generation.
Just as you know, at the moment, the MVP model is only available for the Windows platform at the moment.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So, which makes it a bit of a damper on it.
I know. But I expect that PC Soft in all its glory is going to have that out in Web 21.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that because I think that's where it's heading, actually.
I think it's going to be very nice, yeah. I think it's going to be very nice indeed.
Any other quirks which you have to watch out for?
The biggest ones is make sure that if you're actually doing record functionality and you're displaying where you got an error or something like that to it, you cannot do that.
Yeah,
it will crash your program.
That's typically of a thread.
Yeah, because you're in a thread, and you got to understand if you're using it for both, then one of the parameters that I send is whether or not that it's a thread or not. I send a little deal of an equate to say whether or not that I'm using it as a thread or not, and that tells whether I post the error to the screen or not do anything with it at all.
Hey Andy, we have another question.
So request update calls a request for display. Correct. You're absolutely right, Clint. That's what it does. It calls that, and so this is, I mean, it's sweet because I've had some refresh procedures, but the problem is it executes the entire thing every time. And this right here has been very nice. This is something I saw when I was reading through all the documentation. I said, that might be workable. That might be nice and workable. So I think it's something of I think that everybody out there that's especially working with larger scale data and multiple users for their systems, I think this is absolutely imperative to look at and figure out how to implement, because it's gonna make a much more richer user experience.
Yeah, it makes the whole interface slicker. It doesn't make it like if it hangs up on you for a few seconds or something.
And that's the deal, because 9 times out of 10 when you get called on support, it says, well, I click this button and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then you realize that what he's done is he's trying to select 150,000 records and expecting immediate results.
Even, well, I've got customers who've got less than that, maybe 1,000 records. But the problem is when I found out that they've got such a slow old PC, my performance index, according to the one website, is like 8,000 plus, and then you go look up his performance index, it's 800. And you're like, oh, goodness gracious me. That's why he thinks he's hanging, because he hasn't got the performance in his PC.
Right. Right. So, if you put this to good work, you'll certainly benefit. You'll probably reduce the number of people that's calling you, and I think it's a great advantage for putting out products anyway.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, and it's easy. They made it really easy because I've actually seen this done somewhat in C#, and it's convoluted and a pain in the butt. But they have made this flat easy, and all I can say is big kudos to the PC Soft crew that put this together.
I agree. This is also where you would everywhere where you would put a twirly round circle which says wait. This is where it's ideal.
Right. Yeah. The and I still use that, but it kind of doesn't do anything in the thread. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thanks.
Anything else? Anybody else got a question that I can answer?
Don't have any other questions out here that I see.
Now, make sure that one deal is don't put this in your request, because all it's going to do is loop back and do the same thing again. So that was an example code, everybody. That's not something you actually put there.
There's a bug.
It would be a bug, immediate bug. Well, Andy told me to put it there. No, I did not.
He was telling. Yeah.
So you're all done, Andy?
I'm all done. This is not a very slow one. It's a pretty quick one. You can always post questions up there as you get through it if you're using it for a certain thing or something like that. But they've made it so easy. But I think that everybody needs to be exposed to it. I think everybody needs to take a look at it and see what they can do with it, because I think they'll be very happy with it.
Very handy.
Oh yeah, very very handy little. If some of the small stuff or your stuff you look at it and go, I don't ever use that. Yeah. Then you realize what you can use it for, and you go, I like that. But the DEF CON is what we really need to talk about, because we're going to have a bunch of these new V20 features we're going to be showing and teaching how to use, and things like that. It's going to be there. So go ahead, Tim. I know you want to talk about it.
Yeah, go on over to the WX DevCon website. As you can see, we have 114 days and 22 hours and some odd minutes remaining till the DevCon begins. But a more immediate thing is we only have a couple weeks before the early bird special ends, and the early bird ends in 2 weeks, 14 minutes, or 2 weeks, 14 hours, 24 minutes, and some odd seconds. And we have the schedule out here. We have descriptions for most of the topics that will be discussed.
Mm-hmm.
All the information's out here. If you have any other questions, you can just let us know. So.
And be known that since it is a media island, my wife said yes, she is going to come. Period. Deal with it. So.
Yeah. Tracy will be there.
That's what she told me anyway. That's what she told me. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
She's only coming along to keep you in town.
Not much. We're going to take her little car. We're not going to take my truck. So she says, well, I got to go over here and go over here, because she got cousins that live around the area, and she's going to go visit them. I said, I ain't letting you drive my truck in Florida.
Okay. So we all done for the day?
We're all done.
Thanks again, Andy.
Thanks again, Andy.
Yeah.
Enjoy your weekend.
Y'all be good at it. That's all I can say.